Most people think making prayer more effective means finding the perfect words, the right time of day, the right spiritual vocabulary, some formula that finally unlocks God's attention. But when you actually read what Jesus said about prayer, none of it looks like that at all. Effective prayer was never a trick, a technique, or a system to optimize. These are 7 specific things Jesus explicitly taught and modeled, from shutting the door to your inner room, to releasing a grudge before you even open your mouth, to the shameless persistence of a widow who refused to quit. If your prayer life feels like it's going nowhere, there's a high chance you're skipping number 3 without even realizing it. Let's look at the 7 things Jesus said to do to make your prayers truly effective, and the quiet pattern hiding inside all of them. Most people think making prayer more effective means finding the right words, the perfect phrase, the right time of day, some formula that finally gets God's attention, the way you tweak a recipe until it finally works. And then you actually read what Jesus said about prayer, and none of it looks like that at all. This is not about finding the right words. This is not about praying at the right time of day, in the right posture, with the right vocabulary. This is not a formula, a trick, or a technique to unlock something. This is 7 specific things Jesus said and modeled, and by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly what all 7 of them actually have in common. Let's start with the first one, because it's the very first instruction Jesus gives on the subject, before he even teaches the Lord's Prayer itself. Go into your room, Jesus says, and when you have shut the door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. This is thing 1, pray in private. Not because prayer with other people is wrong. Jesus prayed with his disciples plenty of times, but he's pointing at something underneath the habit. When nobody else is in the room, you find out what your prayer life actually sounds like without an audience shaping it. No one to impress, no one to perform for, just you and the door shut, and a Father who already sees everything happening behind it. Here's what changes when you actually do this. The words get more honest, because honesty was the only thing that room was ever built for. Thing 2 comes immediately after that, in the very next verses, when Jesus gives his disciples an actual model to follow, the Lord's Prayer itself. Count what's happening in it. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. 9 short lines, no padding, no repeated phrases for effect. Every single line is doing specific work: worship, submission, dependence, confession, protection, and then it's done. This is thing 2, pray briefly and pray directly. Jesus explicitly warns, right before giving this prayer, against thinking many words are what earn a hearing. The model he hands his own disciples proves the point by example. Effective prayer was never measured in length. Before we go further, here's where we are. 2 things down: privacy and brevity. 5 more to go. And the next one is a prerequisite most people skip completely, because it has nothing to do with the words in the prayer at all. Thing 3, forgive before you pray, not after. Jesus says this directly right in the middle of teaching about faith and prayer. Whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. The Greek word for forgive here is aphiemi, to release, to let go entirely, the same word used for canceling a debt. Notice where Jesus places this instruction, not as a separate topic for another day, right inside the act of praying itself. When you stand praying, forgive. Here's what that means practically. You can say every right word to God with one hand lifted in prayer, while the other hand is still closed around a grudge. Jesus is telling you, open that hand first, not because forgiveness earns God's attention, but because holding onto something you refuse to release actively distorts the very posture prayer requires. Thing 4 is the twin of that instruction, and it's just as direct. Have faith in God, Jesus says. Whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you will have them. James adds the warning side of the same coin. Let him ask in faith, with no doubting, Because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. This is thing 4. Pray in faith, without doubting. Not pretending certainty you don't feel. Remember, one father in Mark's gospel prayed honestly, I believe, help my unbelief, and Jesus still healed his son. Faith here isn't the absence of struggle. It's refusing to let one hand ask, while the other hand is already planning for God to fail. Thing 5 is easy to miss, because it doesn't sound like a prayer instruction at first. It sounds like something else entirely. If you abide in me, Jesus tells his disciples the night before his crucifixion, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. The Greek word here is meno, to abide, remain, stay rooted, the same word used repeatedly through that entire chapter for a vine and its branches. Jesus isn't describing a technique for asking better. He's describing a relationship you stay inside of continually, so that when a request finally comes, it's growing out of that connection rather than reaching for it from a distance. This is thing 5, abide. Prayer that works isn't a phone call you make only when you need something. It's a conversation inside a relationship you never actually left. Now the 6th thing, and Jesus tells an entire parable specifically to make this point. Luke tells you exactly why Jesus told this story right at the start, that men always ought to pray and not lose heart. There's a widow in a certain city, and a judge who neither fears God nor regards man. She keeps coming to him, asking for justice against her adversary, and he refuses for a while. But eventually he says to himself, even though I do not fear God nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. Think about who this woman actually was in that world. No husband to advocate for her, no legal standing of her own, nothing but persistence as her only tool. And it works, not because the judge suddenly grew a conscience, but because she simply would not stop asking. And Jesus draws the comparison directly. Shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him? I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. This is thing 6. Pray persistently and don't lose heart. The Greek word Luke uses for losing heart is ekakeo, to grow weary, to give up, to quit before the answer arrives. If a widow's persistence could move a judge who genuinely didn't care about her, Jesus' argument is, how much more will persistence move a father who already does? And now the 7th thing, the one that ties every other one together. Whatever you ask in my name, Jesus says, I will do it, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. Ask, and you will receive, that your joy may be full. In my name isn't a magic phrase to add at the end of a sentence like a password. In that world, a name carried a person's full character, authority, and reputation behind it. A servant sent in the name of a master could act with the master's actual authority, because the name represented everything the master stood for. To ask in Jesus' name means aligning what you're asking with who he actually is and what he actually wants, which is exactly what John writes elsewhere. This is the confidence that we have toward him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. This is thing 7. Pray according to his character, not as a blank check with his name stamped on it for approval. And this is where the open loop from the very beginning finally closes. Remember the question, what do all 7 of these actually have in common? Privacy, brevity, forgiveness, faith, abiding, persistence, alignment with his name. None of them are a technique to master. Every single one of them assumes something specific. That prayer isn't a request system you're trying to optimize. It's an ongoing relationship with the Father who is already listening. And these 7 things are simply what it looks like to actually live inside that relationship, instead of just visiting it occasionally with a list. Maybe you know a smaller version of this in your own relationships. Think about the difference between a friend you only contact when you need something, a favor, a ride, money, and a friend you're in regular contact with, who already knows what's going on in your life before you ask for anything at all. Requests land completely differently in the second relationship. Not because the words are more polished, because the relationship was never absent between the asking. So here is what all of this leaves you with. First, the truth of it. None of these 7 things Jesus taught about prayer are a formula or a technique. Pray privately, pray briefly and directly. Forgive before you pray. Pray in faith without doubting. Abide continually. Pray persistently without losing heart. And pray according to his name and character, not as a blank check. Second, what that means for you. If your prayer life feels like it isn't working, the fix was probably never better vocabulary. It was probably one of these 7, a door that's never shut, a grudge that's never released, a request made from a distance instead of from inside the relationship. And third, the part that should stay with you longest. A widow with no power at all moved a judge who didn't care about her one bit, purely through persistence. Jesus' entire argument is that you have something she didn't. A father who already cares, before you even ask. Which of these 7 things are you missing right now? Privacy, brevity, forgiveness, faith, abiding, persistence, or alignment with his character? Tell me below, because naming the gap honestly is usually the first step toward closing it. Because in the end, Jesus never described prayer as a system to unlock. He described it as a relationship you're already inside of. And these 7 things are simply what it looks like to actually live there.